Good morning. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about phase 3 of the road trip project. It's a little bit long, but you'll notice that every step is small, and there's just a lot of steps. That's why it'll feel long while I'm explaining it. And the first thing you have to decide when starting phase 3 is how many people you're going to take on this trip. Okay, this is going to determine all of the rest of your costs. So make sure that you are making the right decision here because it's going to be hard to change it later. Okay? And the first thing you're going to do is adjust the expressions that you created in phase 2. So in phase 2, you had the variable p for people. And you didn't know how many people you're going to take. But now that you've decided, you're going to take this number and write the expression that you had. Let's say for flights, let's say it was 1000 p. And then instead of p, you're gonna put the number of people you're taking. So if you're taking 5 people, it would be 1000 times 5. And so you're gonna write your original expression here. So assuming mine was 1000 p, it'll look like this. And then I'm gonna write my final expression here. So it'll be 1000 times 5. So my final expression is 5000. I know it's just a number. You're confused about why it's called an expression, but it's still an expression. Other entertainment, for example, will also not have variables. Food will, because food was the cost times P times D. So you had two variables there. So once you multiply by P, you'll still have D in your final expression. Accommodation is slightly different. In the expression for accommodation, you only had the variable D. But keep in mind here those rules. Only 2 people can sleep in one hotel room. So if you have 5 people, you need 3 rooms. If you have 7 people, you need 4 rooms. And so you need to see how many rooms you're going to be renting and multiply the cost by the number of rooms. Okay? So it's as if there's a variable R. So give me the first expression is going to be just for 1 room, and then your final expression is going to be for the number of rooms that you actually need. And again, this is the rule here that 2 people can sleep in 1 room unless you have like a bigger suite or a big house or something, and you need to note that. So you need to write that if that's the case. The same goes for the car. Only 5 people can fit in a car, legally, I guess, unless you have a bigger car that says that it can take more passengers. So on the rental website, it needs to say can take, let's say, like 7 passengers or whatever. And so you'll need to also note that here, okay? At this point, you cannot change any decisions you made in phase 1 or 2. You have to keep them, and you'll have a chance to change them later. So for now, just stick with what you have already. For gas, you're just going to multiply your expression by the number of cars that you rented. So if you rented 2 cars, that means you're gonna pay twice as much for gas. So whatever your expression for gas is, you're just going to be multiplying it by the number of cars. And possibly if you just have 1 car, then it won't change. Okay? So moving on. In this section, you're going to calculate how many kilometers you're going to be driving at all. And so this is very important because it's very detailed. You're going to start your first drive in the airport, assuming you pick up your rental car there. So your first trip is going to be from the airport to the hotel. So and you can just write airport and hotel here, okay? And use Google Maps to find the distance that it'll be. So write the distance in kilometers. Then let's say you go to your first destination. So you're going to say hotel, and then you're going to say that's going to be your second trip. So you're going from the hotel to whatever your first destination is. Maybe it's a theme park or something. You have to say the name of it, okay? And put the distance. Then let's say the next day you went from one city to another. So you went from Milan to Rome, and then you put the distance here as well, and so on. Okay, so focus on the destinations that you're going in each city, and focus on changing cities. But please don't worry about going to specific restaurants or anything like that, because then it's going to get too tedious. Okay. So you're just going to sort of make an itinerary for yourself. First trip is airport to hotel, hotel to theme park, then back to hotel. Actually, let's do theme park, hotel, because we're going back, right? And so these two are probably going to be the same distance, and then maybe next one would be Milan to Rome, and we'll put the distance, and so on until you finish your trip. It should end at some airport, I guess, so that you can fly back. I said don't worry about the smaller trips to like restaurants and stuff like that, because in the end, we're going to add 10% to our total distance. So once you have all the distances here, you're going to add them up and write the total in this field. But then you're going to add 10% to it to account for any restaurants you went to, or let's say you went to the grocery store, or you drove somewhere, then forgot something and had to drive back, or whatever. So you're going to add 10% to whatever the total distance is, just to be safe, okay, as sort of an estimate. And this is what you're going to use for the total distance that you're driving for using the car. Okay? In this section, in the budgeting section, you're going to get your assigned budget. You're going to write it here. And you're sort of just dividing it into different categories. And at this point, you don't have to make any calculations. You divide it completely up to you. So you can decide like, okay, I want to spend this much on flights, this much on food, and so on. So you're going to divide the budget here such that the total, if you add all of these up, should be equal to or less than your assigned budget. So let's say I have 150,000. That's my budget. And so on. We're going to add all of these up, and I right now I'm not making calculations. I'm just thinking like, okay, flights are expensive, accommodation expensive, entertainment maybe less so. And so when you add all of these up, the total has to be less than or equal to 150,000 because you're just sort of categorizing it yourself. And again, you're not making any calculations. You're just sort of seeing what fits where. Okay? Once you're done with all of this, you're going to add certain groups, like certain categories together. The flights and the entertainment don't really have a variable anymore. That's why it says none over here. So we're going to add them together to sort of make like to make the budget simpler. And then the food, the accommodation, and the rental car all depend on the number of days, right? So we're going to add all of these allocated budgets together. Again, these are just the numbers you put here. So if I had 50,000 in flights and 10,000 in entertainment, then here I would write 60,000, right? And keep the numbers simple so that it doesn't get to be too much work. And then your gas and the allocated budget sum. So this should be exactly the same number you have here because you're not combining it with anything else. Because it's the only one with the variable x as in like kilometers. Now here, you're going to use the expressions that you made earlier. So if you click this link, it should take you to the expressions you made here in the very first, or in the second section of phase 3. You're going to copy those final expressions exactly as they are into this table down here. So flights, entertainment, food, accommodation, rental car, and then gas. And then you're going to add these expressions together based on the group. So notice how in the last table, flights and entertainment are together, which means you're going to add the expression for flights and the expression for entertainment. Food, accommodation, and the rental car are together. So each of those three expressions are going to be added together. Notice they'll have the same variable, which means that they're like terms. And once you add them together, you're going to write your result here. Okay? For gas, you don't have to add it because it's the only one, so it doesn't make sense to put in some of the expressions. Now, once you get to this section, you'll have your budget divided into the three groups that we discussed and that you can see here in this table. And you'll have your expressions for each of those categories, right? For each of those groups. And so in this case, you'll like in this table, you'll create an inequality to compare your expression with the actual budget that you allocated to each of those groups. So for example, sticking with our 60,000 for flights and entertainment, you're going to be looking at your actual cost for that. So let's say my actual costs were like 75,393, and so I would have to say that this has to be less than 60,000 because this side is the budget that I gave it, right? And so notice here that this is not true, and so we'll have to change something about it, but we'll just write it as it is right now. And let's say for food, accommodation, and rental car, once I added all the expressions up, I got something like this, like 15,000D. 15,000D, and then I would say is less than, and we're always going to be using the less than sign because we have to spend less than our budget. Actually, less than or equal to. That would be more accurate. So less than or equal to, let's say if I gave this group, if I gave it like 110,000. And the same for gas, but with gas it's going to be X. So you'll have whatever let's say like 3.02X is less than or equal to, let's say you put like 5,000, I don't know how much. Okay, and so you'll have three inequalities, two of them with variables, one without, and then you're going to solve them. So for flights and entertainment, it's basically going to be the same thing that you had up here. For the other two, you're going to solve for D and X respectively. So here, your answer should be D is less than or equal to something, and then X is less than or equal to something, okay? Based on you solving this inequality. If you forgot how to solve inequalities, refer back to the videos about solving inequalities. Okay, let me get rid of this. Now, once you have your solutions, they actually, like what they mean is, like when I say, let me bring this back. When I say D is less than a certain number, this means that this number is your maximum number of days that you can spend. And here the X is going to be maximum number of kilometers that you can drive. So you'll have constraints, and by constraints I mean limits. This is the maximum number of days you can spend on the trip. This is the maximum number of kilometers that you can drive. Okay? And so once you have those maximums based on your budget, you're going to compare them to your original plan. So whatever you had in your original plan, what the number of days you were planning on staying, you're going to put here. So let's say this was 5, but then when I solved for D, the maximum was 4.5 or 4.7. If it's 4.7, that means that it's 4 because you can't stay a half day at a hotel, right? And so you're going to be rounding down always because 4.7 is not enough. If you stay 5, that would be over budget. So my budget constraint is 4 days. Let's say my original plan was to drive like 4,000 kilometers, but my budget actually allows me to drive 6,000. So maybe I put too much money in gas, right? And so I can move some money around to make it fit. So let me delete those. Okay, so here you're just comparing, and then in the next section you're adjusting to make it fit. If things were like certain categories were allocated too much money, you can take it and put it in somewhere else that needs the money. Okay, and so you can change your allocation and write down the changes here. And so there are 3 cases right now. Either your original plan fits your budget perfectly and you have no problem, or it can fit, you just need to move money around in the categories and reallocate money to different categories, or it doesn't fit at all no matter how much you reallocate. Okay? In all 3 cases, you need to do the following. If your budget is if your plan is below the budget, you can always spend more. You can always stay at fancier hotels, rent more expensive cars, or not, but still fill those out, okay? Regardless. And you're going to put the changes here. So if a category got more money, you're going to put a positive number. If a category got less money, then you're going to put a negative number. If a category got the same amount of money, you're just going to put 0. Okay? If it doesn't fit in any way, you can make, or if you want to spend more, let's say you want to rent a fancier car or anything like that, you can make changes to your phase 1 plan. So you're going to describe the changes you made here. You can do this in paragraph form or in bullet point form, whichever one you want. Once you describe those changes, you're going to have to write the new expressions, right? And so you're going to come up with the new expressions and write the new inequality. So if you change the car, that means the rental car expression has changed. And so this inequality will change. So I'll need you to write the new inequality. Okay? Let me write here, new. Same for the flights. And this is just going to be, again, 2 numbers and gas. Okay? So you describe the changes. You give me the new inequality. You solve it again to show that your constraints can fit your new plan. So by the time you get to this table, the new plan has to fit your budget constraints, or else it can't work, right? And so you make the necessary changes such that it fits. Okay? And at this point, you're done. You're done with the planning. You're done with budgeting. You're done with everything because you made a plan and it fits your budget. What's left is just a reflection question. So I gave you the whole page for it. You can write the whole page if you want. I just want you to answer this. How did using variables, expressions, and inequalities help you plan this trip? And I want you to respond in paragraph form. Okay? And before I leave you, I want just to say a note on group work. You have group members, like most of you have group members from different cohorts, or some that are in cohort E or whatever. You guys need to be able to communicate, find the time to discuss what work you have to do for this phase, divide the work on it separately, then meet again after you're done and before submitting to review each other's work. If you don't review each other's work, that means that there's a risk of someone forgetting to do something which someone else could have pointed out easily, and then all of the group getting a worse grade and having to redo it. Okay? So that's it for phase 3. Long video, I know. If you have any questions, please email me, and I'll see you on Zoom. Bye.